let's get going. I think it's time to start, Linda.
Mm.
Um, to the group, thank you all for joining us today. It is how LeanLaw and QuickBooks Online Advanced is a holistic solution for mid-sized law firms. With me, I'm Jonathan Fishman. I'm the Chief Operating Officer of LeanLaw. I'm one of the founders, and with me is my good friend Linda Artesani from Artesani Bookkeeping. She is a wonderful friend of LeanLaw, and we've been collaborating for a while now. So this is sort of old hand to us today. Linda, please say hello.
I would love to say hello. I can't get my video on. It says you've stopped the video, so it must be a lovely Zoom setting. It says host and stop the video.
Well, and just to the group, can everyone hear us? And you can chat or send a question over and just let us know that we're able to be heard as a first point, just to make sure.
Yep, loud and clear. Awesome.
Okay, great.
Okay.
Just making sure. So, and one thing I wanted to make mention, I'm on camera, but I'm going to turn myself off of camera when we start to get into the product side of things. One of the notes that we received from one of our previous webinars that Linda and I did together was that the video was nice to see us talking, but in the end, it took away valuable screen space. So, so we're going to talk about two sides of the fence here, just to stage what we're going at. A lot of today is about product, LeanLaw product and QuickBooks Advanced product, and Linda and I will be kind of sharing the screen back and forth, where she'll speak to the advanced side and some of the reporting requirements as a function of LeanLaw and QuickBooks Advanced. And then I'm going to speak of LeanLaw in the context of its usability. So what we're hoping is that at the end of this, you have a sense, a taste of how the two platforms work together. So I'm going to speak a little bit about LeanLaw. I can see a lot of really familiar faces on them, so a lot of folks know us. But I'm going to get more specific and just kind of go back. LeanLaw is a SaaS company. We are heavily focused in the law space, helping and facilitating the invoicing platform or workflow for small and mid-sized law firms. Some tenets for us, some core truths, is that when we started the company, felt like QuickBooks Online always was a viable accounting package for small to medium-sized law firms, and that we believe QuickBooks is the source of truth. And as I mentioned, we are 100% invoicing focused. So what we won't do is become a practice management tool to do email management, document management, other facets of that. We have this mindset that wherever possible, we want to automate, not to the point that we think that everything can be perfectly automated, but the idea of getting rid of manual tasks and making things flow and be more easily managed between a QuickBooks environment and LeanLaw. Of course, because we're SaaS, it's anytime, anywhere access. And so that means any device, anywhere, you should be able to access your LeanLaw. And in this world of a pandemic, that is proving valuable, and we're seeing lots of firms coming to us that are accelerating that pathway of adopting an online platform. From a focus, LeanLaw recently launched a new product called LeanLaw Pro, which I'll speak to a little shortly, but fundamentally, our energy as a company is narrowly focused around mid-sized law firms. That tends to be 5 to 50 law firms, or lawyers, I should say, inside the firm. And really what those firms need is more sophisticated, more advanced reporting, more sophisticated and advanced accounting, more security and control over the data and the users, and bulk actions. That's really what differentiates a pro product from a core product, is that we're more sophisticated in those areas. So Linda, I want you to just talk a little bit about yourself and your practice, and then if you could tell us and introduce us to QuickBooks Advanced.
Sure. My name is Linda Artesani, and I am the president of Artesani Bookkeeping, and I'm targeted mostly to working with attorneys and law firms, do a lot of migrations, a lot of cleanup work, a lot of ongoing work as well, mostly working with mid-market now, which has been like a sweet spot for us. I partnered with Sarah Prevost, so we work together in tandem, which is a lot of fun, and we really enjoy what we're doing. Working with QuickBooks Advanced, I have to say that a lot of the clients that come to us, they sometimes are in Plus. A lot of times they don't even know anything about Advanced. And there's so many features that are built into Advanced that are time savers. So what I mean by that, we've got the workflow feature, which is really, it's a really cool feature because you can set it up to, for example, we have a client that is an immigration firm, and one of the things they do is several receptionists will take in payments, and before they would have to go in after they took the payment in and go back in and actually create the invoice and the sales receipt and then send off a receipt to the client, and it happens automatically. So it's a lot of the automation pieces that are in Advanced are time saving. They're also specifically to Advanced, a lot of the things that are baked in. You've got some automated invoicing, the batch invoicing, things of that nature, which help because anytime you automate things, you have more, not only efficiency, but more accuracy. The other thing is the roles, the users and the roles. That's the other big piece of Advanced. So most of these firms have multiple people that will be have touch points inside of QuickBooks, but not necessarily does the partner want an admin looking at what money's in the bank. So you can streamline their user role down to the granular, to the point where they can see the deposit makes it into the bank because they're in charge of AR, but they can't see payroll and they can't see they can just see the deposit side of the bank account, which has been one of the bigger selling features thus far of QuickBooks Online Advanced.
So let's take a step back real quick because I before we get in and understand where Advanced came from. I'm going to just pop this onto my screen. And this is Intuit's they're essentially their strategy. And they use a framework called Big Bets. And one of the big bets, you'll see revolutionize the speed to benefit, but I want to get to Big Bet 5. So this is where Advanced came from. And I think it's important to understand that this isn't just, little LeanLaw and little, Artisani bookkeeping saying, hey, these two things work together. This is a 5-year explicit strategy where one of the 5 major focuses of Intuit is this idea of disrupting small business in mid-market. With that came the idea of the Advanced product. And I'm going to speak to it from the Intuit side, which was they essentially said, hey, we need more sophisticated role management, as Linda said. So they need more support, more underlying horsepower. They saw that the advanced users, or what would be advanced users, were really stumbling with how slow and sluggish. Now, if we narrow down what that focus is, so Advanced is a big part of them moving into mid-market, because you have to remember there's quite a big gap between QuickBooks, Xero, other sort of small business accounting packages, and then you get up into SAP or NetSuite, or even in the law specific space, a Rippey Kingston, which is now a company called something or other, which is a integrated accounting focused law firm platform. It's an accounting packages for law firms. So Intuit wanted to emerge in this space, and they initially focused on professional services as one of the focal points, and then from there, the tip of the spear, SharePoint. Thank you. I was just corrected from a colleague that it was SharePoint. That is a company now what is Rippey Kingston, which is much easier to remember. So the tip of the point is law, and law is really, really critical to them. This is a really important segment. So you're going to see lots of activity and traction from the Intuit community in the months to come, making law very attractive for QuickBooks Online Advanced. So where, Linda, you kind of got in specific. I want a little bit of a, well, actually, I'm going to do one thing real quick. I have a poll, and I want to send that to the group. I have 2 quick questions that I want to ask to the group. So if you could all answer this question very quickly. It's just, where do you work? We're just curious if you're working for a law firm or you're working for a accounting firm or somewhere neither. Okay, I'm going to end the polling in just a moment when we hit 75% or 30 seconds, whichever comes first. Okay, so it's really a mix. 30% don't work for either. 45% are working for law firms, and 24% work for accounting firms that support law firms. And then I have a second one. Let's see if I can get to it. If we talk about today's activity, I'm going to launch this. What's most important for you to learn today? More about QuickBooks Advanced and how it works with law firms, so more of a QuickBooks Advanced focus. How LeanLaw and QuickBooks Advanced work together, or you already know about the LeanLaw side. You already know about LeanLaw, and you want to know more about the QuickBooks side. Okay, so we're going to talk a little. We're going to steer this and focus on the QuickBooks. So it's really about what's the majority of the results is that how the two work together, and more about QuickBooks Advanced. So I'm going to end that poll. Thank you all for that. That's helpful. So let's go to our next slide. And this is the way we're going to break this down today. And Linda and I are going to share the responsibility of presentation. But the context and structure of how we wanted to present the information was really in 4 buckets. One was thinking about your team, how they might interact with LeanLaw. And I'm going to just cover this very lightly, especially given what you folks are most interested in. The second, I want to think about the accounting or firm manager. And that really is the context of invoices and data and the billing and invoicing workflow. And Linda's really going to, I'll do a little, but Linda's going to focus on that as well. Then we're going to talk about reporting, which gets into the partners or the attorneys and looking at data between the 2 platforms. And then lastly, I'm going to spend a little time on transitioning, meaning just queuing up a structure so you understand that if you're moving from one platform to the next, how that works. Right? What I mean is, if you're not a LeanLaw customer or not a QuickBooks Advanced customer, how you move into that. And along the way, I really encourage anyone to ask questions, either from chat or from the formal questions. We'll be watching that while we speak. So I'm going to pop open LeanLaw real quick, because we're going to focus now on essentially the time tracking, data transparency. So what we want to do here, and I just want to quickly overview this and bring this in. So just so you know, LeanLaw has 2 different products now. We have a Pro product and a Core product. Today I will be showing Pro. And for most folks who already have familiar with LeanLaw, the Core product, or excuse me, the Pro product is very much what they were using today. We have some immediate features that we'll be enhancing that will be released in the upcoming weeks, like by early July, that will be Pro focused on roles and role management, and one very critical feature with write-down. It's been a gaping hole for us. So when someone who has a familiarity with Pro, or excuse me, with LeanLaw, Pro should feel very similar. Core limits it out, makes it easier for smaller users, smaller law firms, and takes out some of the complexity and sophistication. And again, those 4 data points: more advanced reporting, more advanced accounting, bulk activity, and more control over users. That's what differentiates Pro versus Core. When I pop into LeanLaw and you think about your users, and what I just want to focus quickly is just what the team sees, what they interact with on a daily basis. And there's really 3 or 4 different ways to track time with us. And this is really an easy place for the team to kind of learn. I picked up the calendar, and you can see that there's a visual calendar focused data entry that can be looked at in day view, or it can be looked at in a full week view. And you can see, wow, I didn't track any time. Let me just pull these days. I didn't track any time, early morning on Tuesday the 21st. Why? Or maybe I want to go back to that week and look. So the idea is, how can we help them visually understand how to use the tool? A second time entry tool for LeanLaw is this time review or time entries page, which is really about a very simple hands-on keyboard creating entries for those users that really, don't like a visual tracker. There's also desktop tracker. So this is our installed application. And what I mean by that is this is works on a Mac or a PC. And so if someone doesn't necessarily want to track time in a browser, they can use this tool. And it's very, add a plus button, create a new time entry, and it automatically pushes up to the cloud. And the fourth is a mobile app, which is about, we have a new one that's just about ready to be released. It's in beta testing right now and should be live probably by May 15th. So when users come into LeanLaw, you have to think what's important is that not everyone needs to go in QuickBooks, only a certain subset. And most of the users are going to be interacting with time entry as a fundamental point of what they do. Now, they also might have some access to reports, and really, it's really for attorneys and paralegals and up, depending on what you want, that could see certain reports around, their user activity or other users' activities. When we get into some of these other reports, they're really reserved exclusively for, the attorneys, firm managers, and partners of the firm. Okay, I'm going to go back, and Linda, let's talk a little bit about the accounting and billing workflow. So I'm going to jump back into my deck, and I'm going to jump out of the team and talk really about the firm and accounting manager. And this is what I really wanted to speak to. And Linda, so when you're talking to a firm and you're thinking about trying to understand their billing process, what are some of the things you immediately probe around? Like, what are some of the first questions that you ask as you get brought in when a firm is considering either a migration to QuickBooks Advanced or even coming into a LeanLaw environment?
Well, typically we will start with, first of all, what kind of law firm they're in. That's the number one question. What kind of law do they practice? And then do they have trust accounting? Because that's really important. If they don't have trust accounting, do they have another way of billing? Maybe they do fixed fee. Hopefully we'll see a lot more of that going down the road. Also evergreen billing. So we've got a lot of questions on the type of billing. And then we get into who's doing the billing. So a lot of time with the bigger migrations, when you're dealing with multiple people, you need to know who's the person that's your contact and who's the person that's your decision maker. So those are the important conversations you want to have. When you find out, when you're working with the person that's actually doing the work, you want to find out what the workflow is going to be. And it's probably I think one of the strongest points of LeanLaw, even with customers that I have, that I actually do help with the invoicing. It's nice to have that ability to, put the draft together, get the draft approved, and then do the billing through those steps. Not every firm needs that, but it's a good workflow. It's got, the process is in place so that all those pieces happen and the approvals happen before you actually push the data into QuickBooks. So it's nice to have that part of the workflow that LeanLaw has in place for working with clients, especially when you're getting to the bigger firm. It's nice to have those controls when there's multiple attorneys that are going to get to look at the billing and see the invoices as they're put together being pushed into the accounting platform.
What are the sort of key data points or questions or triggers that say, oh yeah, this person needs to be in advanced? Is it sheer size? Meaning, oh, they're just a big firm, or are there other sort of triggers that says, oh, QuickBooks Advanced would be better than Plus or Essentials or some other flavor of QuickBooks? How do you probe around that, and how do you begin to communicate the value of QuickBooks Advanced relative to the law firm? Because you talked about workflow automation, you talked about reporting, you talked about some of the roles. How do you sort of determine what version of QuickBooks is best for a client, number one, and then number two, how do you then translate that back into the value to the firm?
When we're working with the mid-market clients, sometimes they're in it because there's multiple attorneys, so there's enough matters that would push them into the over 250 chart of account limitation that's in QuickBooks. So that right there, you don't even have to have the discussion because it's the only product that will fit the firm.
Right.
Sometimes it's just.
Hold on. I don't mean to interrupt you, but I want to pause and really make sure everyone understands that. So if I'm going to jump into my demo account and explain this to everyone, so that's just crystal clear. So when we're in QuickBooks, geez, don't know why that happened. When we're in QuickBooks Online, one of the things that was an early trigger for an upgrade was the idea that you had a usage limit. And so in the chart of accounts, if you go into, when you look at your chart of accounts, they're counting all of these 1, 2, 3. When you hit 250, Essentially, that usage triggers you to QuickBooks Advanced, and it's a hard upgrade. You can sometimes, fuss around with it. I think I can show it here under accounts and settings. I have a what they call a sandbox account. Yeah, usage. So now you have a usage number in your settings, and this is what dictates your upgrade. So just one fundamental piece about, regardless of workflow and regardless of custom form fields and all the features that they're adding, this usage trigger is an absolute, must-have for most larger firms. And so I want to really be clear that everyone understands that. Okay, go back. Sorry, Linda, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I wanted to be super clear.
And typically, if you go over 2 attorneys, you can almost guarantee that you're going to be in that place, because the volume of matters is going to put you into the place where you need advanced. Also, it's the user roles. That's my second place. Like, how many people are going to need to have access to QuickBooks? And when you get into the mid-market firms, you're looking at, maybe there's, in the case of the immigration firm, there's receptionists that have access. There's a person that handles the accounts receivable. There's just multiple people in it, and maybe somebody that does accounts payable. So you're able to streamline the roles that way. And they've done a great job, and I know they're not done with it, but they've done a great job with creating the roles and having the users. And it's getting better each time you come in. There's different user roles that are in here that you're able to pull up and define, and you can really start to get to the point where they're allowed to use. You can get pretty granular. You can get to the point where some people cannot see. So the access screens, it's really fascinating what they're able to see and what they're not able to see. If they're doing accounts receivable, they are not able, depending on how you set the roll up, they might not be able to even see any of the trust accounting, because those are liability accounts. So you're able to really put it down to a very small level that they're able to see, and the screens will be somewhat blank. So you won't have the access that you have here, that you can see here. If you're Fred, obviously you're going to see everything. He's the master admin.
Yeah, in LeanLaw, just so we understand, LeanLaw is also sort of mirroring that type of role management. So this is a new phase. It's not quite in the product yet, but the idea that based on the type of users in the firm, we can begin and get very granular about what it is that we want them to see, whether they see something that's just exclusive to them, My Matters, or something that they can see all. So LeanLaw is looking very closely at the idea of roles and what data visibility you have, so that larger firms can control who sees what. So getting back to that question, you said, we talked about usage, we talked about roles. What other kind of drivers force someone into QuickBooks Advanced? I would imagine reporting is another one that you mentioned, right? So can we speak a little bit to that?
Yeah, the reporting, you'll get a lot more if you're looking at essentials. And I've even had some attorneys that are saying, why can't I use Simple Start? You're really restricted in the amount of functionality in the product. So when you get up into the higher levels like Plus or into Advanced, you're going to get more roles. You've got Fathom built in. If you want to use Fathom, that's there, and it does have the KPI abilities and things like that you can work with. And it's an app that's actually integrated with QuickBooks Advanced. The value to the firm, though, in the whole is a lot of these firms, especially when you're doing the migrations, they're coming off a platform that may be costing the firm, 10, 15,000. We've seen a lot. And then maybe if it's desktop, then they're hosting it. So you start to look at all of those numbers when you're talking QuickBooks Online Advanced to a law firm in this mid-market category. $150 a month is not going to scare them away.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's only $150. So, for its functionality, it tends to be, it's kind of a no-brainer. But there's still some, hey, why can't I use this one versus that one? Talk a little, you had mentioned workflows a little bit, but could you speak to that a little bit more in context of, that's a big feature for QuickBooks Advanced, is this idea of automation and workflows. So maybe speak a little bit specifically, you'd mentioned that one firm that was using, let's review that again.
Well, the workflows, we were going to put them into Invoice Sherpa because they
Linda, what is a workflow to start?
Okay, so the workflow is just some things that you can automate inside of QuickBooks now that actually live, they're baked into the product. So for one example is that receptionist receiving the money and then they're able to automatically, as soon as the money's entered as a payment, the receipt goes out to the person you set the client up and the email's in and it'll get sent out to the client automatically. The receptionist doesn't have to do anything, they just receive the payment.
So, so I'm just going to interrupt you so we're really clear. So what used to be 2 or 3, I know this sounds really basic, but it really is a more sophisticated way that, so when they receive payment, there's another task or 2 that are downstream from that used to be manual, but now you've scripted this workflow together, correct?
Correct. So instead of the receptionist taking the money in and then maybe at the end of the day going through all her receipts and then going into the program and emailing a copy out, this happens instantly when she creates the payment. And it's also one of the other things that we like is with a lot of times law firms have a lot of accounts receivable they have to manage. So there's a couple of features in QuickBooks where you can have it send out a reminder if it's hitting the last day of when, if you have terms of net 15, it's going to send out automatically, if you preset the settings to automatically send out anybody who hasn't paid in that 15-day window, it'll get sent out, or whatever the terms are, it'll get sent out as, hey, maybe you missed this, you didn't, if you're getting an email invoice, it could happen that it doesn't show as, they may have missed it. And then at the 15 days or 30 days after that, there's an automatic setting that you can have in place that it will send a more stronger letter saying, hey, you're past due. So that's one of the workflows.
Can it also at the, or maybe that's a part of it, but can you script in, interest or some type of interest on that? Now you've hit 30 days or 60 days, we're going to start charging you interest.
You can, I believe that QuickBooks does it as a separate line. It doesn't add it into the original invoice. It comes out as a separate invoice. Another thing that's in workflows and they keep adding to this. So there's a thing there for vendors as well. But another thing they have too, which a lot of times the law firms will take in all these checks because there's a lot of paper happening in a law firm. They'll take in all the checks and then maybe on Friday, they will go to the bank with it. And so these things will sit in undeposited funds because they're entering the payments as they come in. And there's a little trigger there that will say, hey, you have money sitting in undeposited funds. Did you want to make a deposit with it? So it's another automation feature where I think with Intuit and QuickBooks, they've seen a pattern where people build these monies up in undeposited funds and they don't realize that they need to make that next step to make the deposit. So this program reminds you of that, which is pretty neat.
So and again, this is really, so if you look at the history of like QuickBooks Online, when it came out in the early 2000s, it was very rudimentary.
Oh yeah.
And what I mean is that it took a lot of flack in the accounting community because it was so early. And I can imagine a lot of you are online saying, well, it seems like we're just sort of forced to pay more because there's more usage, right? That workflows are sort of interesting. And the truth is, the truth is that that's not totally wrong, meaning that I think QuickBooks Advanced is really positioning itself to be mid-market, and there's a lot of things behind the scenes that are happening. More horsepower in terms of making it faster, more service to have a higher grade of service. But the product features are in queue, and I think that's where the focus is going to be as it relates to it. Let's show a little bit. I want to show a little bit about LeanLaw, and then would love to turn it over to you a little bit towards the end, and when we talk about some reporting side of it. One of the things I wanted to mention on the LeanLaw side, and this again is the pro product I'm showing, is this invoicing workflow and the idea that there's different stages. And I'm just going to kind of cover it at a very high level. But the idea that this is essentially, I'm in the billing section, and I'm in ready to bill, and this is your billing. This is the ready to bill. Now, when I look at some of these expenses, you might say, well, where did they come from? So LeanLaw does have the ability that if I just add a bill or expense to LeanLaw and I tag it as a law firm expense, and I'll just tag it to a client, I'll just put it to Henry Jones, and I'm going to put this really big one, I'm going to put $2,500. When I say save and close, LeanLaw will bring that directly over to QuickBooks. I'm sorry, LeanLaw will bring it from QuickBooks directly to LeanLaw. And if I refresh this will be ready and immediately ready to be billed on my Henry Jones. So if I go to Henry Jones, you can see that $2,500 expense that I just put in to QuickBooks is available. And of course, it's available. I can see it in greater detail under expenses and note that there's that $2,500 and it was brought over. But the idea is that the elements that went into this particular invoice came from entering in LeanLaw, and they're drafted in LeanLaw. Once drafts are created and the law firm has the chance to review them, meaning the responsible attorneys, they're in an approved state. I don't have any approved. Once approved, we deliver those to QuickBooks. So we haven't realized this into AR yet, and we've done a few cool things related to that. This QuickBooks tabs are actually live data in QuickBooks. And one of the things that we put in for that same firm that was collecting that payment that we were talking about with workflows is they also struggled with invoice delivery. The idea that some clients needed emails, some clients needed printed. So we created this delivery function and said, this is the state, they're all not paid. I could also look at paid or overdue. And I could say, show me the ones that need to be emailed. And in batch, say deliver, and I could deliver via email. Now this is sending through QuickBooks, and we are delivering all of these emails in batch form. Once they've been delivered in email, they're marked as delivered so that I can differentiate them from ready to be emailed and those that have been delivered. The same goes with print. If I click print, I can easily print those and deliver them via downloading a PDF or combining them. Now, I can also, for those of you that do leads work, identify a subset here with clients with leads and easily, again, grab the leads files that would be uploaded into a system. And lastly, if I'm looking at clients that need to be paid from trust, I just use this pay with trust button and mark that, and in batch can pay all of these from trust. Once I pay something from trust, I'll just pay this one and say record a payment. Oh, I'm sorry, I did the wrong one. Record a trust payment. That will handle all the accounting in QuickBooks. I can then easily come back to that invoice and say, add a trust statement. What that's doing is not only we have a statement inside the memo specific to the invoice, but in addition to that, we're going to attach a detailed ledger of all the trust activity. We just helped a client that asked for that, and we built that feature for the client. And that was just released this week. So in our invoicing workflow, you'll see the expenses coming from LeanLaw or QuickBooks, and you'll see a very set approval. Once they get to QuickBooks, then we deliver and manage our payables. Now, for those of you getting back to Advanced, I could go into sales invoices here and record payments and do different things in QuickBooks if that's your preference. It's really up to the workflows and preferences of the law firm as to what they choose. Whether they want to do it in LeanLaw through our billing architecture, or they want to record payments and deliver to clients through QuickBooks. It's really flexible. Why we built all of this is because the law firm wanted more people in LeanLaw and less people in QuickBooks. So again, any questions or comments from the group, please post those. We're happy to answer them. So Linda, let's flip to your side, and I'm gonna jump ahead actually and talk a little bit about reporting. So we talked about the firm manager and how the firm manager is having to do this billing and the expense and setting up some of these workflows with QuickBooks Advanced. I just want to run through two little reports with LeanLaw just to show you some of the real-time nature of the two platforms. So we have, the first is this ready to bill report. And I'm looking at, the matters that this one user, yeah, sorry, I got distracted because Misty said that we do have a feature that's about ready to be released, that the trust detail is now an attachment to the invoice. Let me go back and show that because maybe that's important to some folks. So if I go to QuickBooks and I look at my paid invoices and I look at those with trust, if you notice this little paper clip, the Fire Engine Corp, I've added a trust statement to it by using this attach a trust statement feature. What that's doing, if I go, what that does is it adds the ledger activity in a statement of sorts directly in the invoices attachment. It actually passes that over to QuickBooks. If I go to Clients, Fire Engine, where are you? I'm sorry, I didn't expect to do this, but I want to show it because it's new. Something paid, probably this one. Yeah, so here's the trust statement that we produced and attached it. It's quite simplistic, but it shows all the trust activity. In addition to that invoice, there was also a trust statement, which is a little hard to see, but if I render in the print preview, it'll be a little bit easier. So
they're asking, what does batch pay from trust and LeanLaw do in QuickBooks? More specifically, what does undeposited funds look like, and how can you tell what client payment goes to what attorney?
I'm going to, oh, thanks. So there's a lot in that question.
Yeah.
I'm going to speak to it in different components. The first is when LeanLaw pays an invoice from trust, when LeanLaw pays an invoice for trust, it's two sides of the transactions. So the first, if I head over to QuickBooks and look at the QuickBooks side, what we've done in the chart of accounts, I can't remember which one we paid, but I'll just go to Jackie's, is that we've written a check paying an invoice out of the trust, citing the liability ledger. Now, when we deposited money to trust, LeanLaw automatically created the liability ledger so that we have ledger-specific activity by client and or by matter. When we look at the ledger activity and we pay it from trust, we have to get the money out, that's a check. The flip side of that, or the second component of that transaction, is the payment off the invoice. So we're making a payment, reducing the accounts receivable and paying off the invoice. Now, if by preference, you can have that money go into undeposited funds or have it directly go into the operating account. So there's two sides to that transaction. Getting back to revenue by attorney, and that's a very good segue into my next, I'll just jump there first. When we talk about tracking income by attorney, LeanLaw has a very sophisticated algorithm that is looking at the payments in QuickBooks in real time. So in the event we know all of the line items, what's an expense, what's a fixed fee, what's an hourly service item. We know all the elements because we produced it. We tracked all of those back to users. Thus, we can produce a revenue by attorney report. In this report, we're looking at this time period, the month. And this particular, this is the show that matters for this user. I could show it for all users and change different variables. What I'm looking at is billed for this period, so I didn't mean to do that, collected, their share, origination, and adjusted share. Billed means David had $33,000 of revenue billed in this period. Collected means during the same period, this month, he's had $17,000 collected, meaning a payment was made in QuickBooks to to invoices that he contributed to. His share was $13,000. The firm, because I just have this setting on, modeled and took a certain percentage. In addition, David had to give up some money for origination because that's the way the firm calculates compensation for attorneys to get to David's adjusted share. So 13.1 plus 240 to get to 13.4. If David then wants to see details of how those numbers came to be, he can click into it. So he can see by client and or by matter the details of what was collected, the 17,000, the share, etc. If he wants to get in even further and say what invoices contributed to the $5,000, he can see it was invoice 2320, 02, and 20. All three of those contributed the $5,600 or the $5,000. So that level of data transparency is there in the firm. Now, this is something that we kind of shifted gears and talked about it from a partner perspective and or attorney perspective. So Misty, I hope that answered, or I'm sorry, Sarah, I hope that answers your question. Happy to do follow-up if you want it. The other thing I want to show the LeanLaw reporting side is this revenue, this WIP report. This becomes a really useful report for attorneys to see where they're trending in a given month. This is money that hasn't been billed. So you can see David's got $28,000 versus work in progress that is ready to be billed. He may or may not choose to bill that. he also can see that matched up against receivable balances, last payments, and trust balances. All of that is live from QuickBooks. If David wanted to go in and see the specifics of a particular matter, he can click in and see all of the elements that are part of that particular matter, including the time entries, expenses, and fixed fees. So David can get into the details as he sees fit. Linda, I'd love to turn the con over to you and share your screen and look a little bit at the QuickBooks side of all of this. Is that, can we do that?
Yep, we can. Hold on.
Okay. I'm going to stop my share and have Linda take over because I want her to show the QuickBooks side. And if I don't answer any questions, or we're really happy to follow up any questions that get unanswered. So let's look at the QuickBooks side and look at some of the reporting from that side. Go ahead, Linda.
Yeah, so you can see here, I just pulled up an invoice. So this invoice was made in LeanLaw, and you can see, I always tell my clients that if they're going to work in anything to do with customers or clients, it should all be done in the LeanLaw side. They shouldn't be coming in here and receiving the payment, especially when it comes to trust, because we want to keep everybody working in all client side. All client reports are up in LeanLaw. That's kind of where everything's mapped out and basically where all the data points are for this part of it. But you can tell because you can see this really great messaging on the invoice. It's telling you the retainer, how much was, how much is in the balance and how much can be applied. So I want to go up to LeanLaw to create this. Now you just showed the bulk way of paying, which is a great way to do it. If you bill monthly and you create all the invoicing through here, if the money's in the account to pay on the matter, with the trust account, there's trust balance there. Like you can see, I've got the account balance is 10,000. So I got plenty of money here to be able to pay this particular invoice. And I just can record the payment singularly. You can do them one at a time here too. And then you can put in any details like check number or whatever and just record the payment here.
Yeah,
I'm going
to interrupt. One of the reasons that used to be the way that you could only do it, and one of the sort of trajectories to getting to a mid-market product was getting into that bulk feature, because it just was not acceptable for a firm that has a certain girth of monthly trust activity to think you'd go one at a time. So just a little of the logic behind that, but there's still, you can pay it individually if you're more comfortable with that.
Right, and a lot of the smaller firms will do it this way. And what I like too is, you can load the transactions and see what's in the account if I hit that button, but also anything that has a green circle here with the QuickBooks logo, this is going to pop me back into LeanLaw and bring me back to what, the whole entire trust account, which is really nice. But and you wanted me to show reporting. Did you want me to show reporting?
Well, I want to kind of have a little Q&A here and talk about, so you've gone through this process where you introduced LeanLaw, you've introduced QuickBooks, we've agreed that QuickBooks Advanced is the right tool. Now you're working through what the reports are, and I know that gets very complicated at times. So I wanted to back in and say, what is that process to get the data in? And then what does some of that reporting look like coming out? Is it just what we saw in LeanLaw? What kind of QuickBooks reports are you putting in? What kind of things are we doing with QuickBooks Advanced that you can do today, or what we foresee tomorrow to get more sophisticated? And I'd like to talk a little bit about, how you were thinking about using reach reporting and that function.
Well, with QuickBooks, we do have reports. Obviously, there's a lot of reports in here that we can use, and there's also Fathom, which is here. You can pop over to it, see the different variety of reporting that you can put in place. But when you're working with attorneys and you're working with, especially with the migrations, if they're coming off of a product like Juris or PC Law or any of those other products that are maybe desktop centric, when you start to work with the migration of moving the data out of the old program and moving it into the new program, you need to know the reporting, kind of need to know the end game as you start to map it out. So you might want to start to use classes. This is where you're starting to really get into where you might want to classify by attorney, because that's what you're going to need to be able to extract the data out to get the reports. Because there's a lot of reporting, a lot of compensation reports. And we've seen some really crazy compensation reports recently working with different law firms that I just amazed at some of the creativity that surrounds it. But it's important to them because that's where they're going to be figuring out their pays, their payments, the partner payments. And so you need to make sure that you're getting the data in the right way when you start to set it up and start to remap all the data that's coming out of the desktop programs or other software so that you're able to get that reporting in place.
Yeah, two notes. LeanLaw does support classing. We initially did it for revenue by attorney tracking, and before we built that image that report that I demonstrated. And what's some of the automation here? So when you're developing this sort of smart reporting or this sort of reporting dashboard that's in QuickBooks, I know that there's some type of automations that you can do just out of QuickBooks and QuickBooks Advanced to send reports in a more, monthly, quarterly, based on certain metrics, and you can also do mashup reports or custom reports, I should say.
Yeah, you can do your custom reports. I don't know if I have really anything in here other than the trust ledger one that I've created, because this is my sandbox file. But in all the products with QuickBooks, you can set up to have reports emailed out, and at specific times. I've had clients that want to know their AR all the time, and sometimes because you've got somebody set up with a specific role where they can actually see some of this reporting, we can set it up so that the report can get emailed to them because they need it for their job, but we don't want to open up their role to be able to get to some of the other points. So this way we send out some of these customized reports that we create. Like if she can see parts, but not, or the admin can see parts of things that their role is limited, but they need to see some other aspects to see how things are coming. We can create roles and then just you create the custom role, and then I can come in here and schedule it, edit it to schedule it, and create a schedule, turn the schedule on, and then create the boilerplate email. And I've got some clients. A lot of times when we work from migration, a lot of the times when we talk to the attorney, they'll say, I have no clue what my AR even is at this point. And maybe they're working in time slips, or they may be working in bill for time or whatever. And they're sitting there going, I have no grasp on it. So once we start to clean it up, we can set up a schedule to let them see this, maybe daily, maybe monthly. You can pick up what you want to, because it's a great place to start to help the attorney and partner with them to help them start to clean it up. Talk to them about their terms. There's lots of different ways you can start to add that advisory piece to working with the attorneys to help them. AR is a big place that a lot of them struggle. There's some even firms we could recommend they go to that will help them do this work for them to kind of stay on top of it to get the ratio to where they want to see that, in the perfect world, you want to see it all be paid on time. It doesn't happen most of the time. So it's one of the places when you start to take on a new client, it's important. I know this is an Accounting Pro webinar. It's one of the places that you can be the hero, as your website says. You can be the hero to your client because you're going to help them get some cash in the door.
Yeah. So I think it's important what you said, which was the conversation of reporting happens at the beginning of the dialogue with a client, right? Right in the beginning.
Yes.
What data do they need? And there's workflow data, like we need to produce invoices, but then of course the derivative is the reporting. And the first phase of that, and I'll get into a little bit about this, but the first conversation of this is just getting your hands around it as to what data is important to the law firm, what reports, what metrics, what KPIs are important. The second piece is to make sure that you have the right workflows as it relates to getting the data into the system. And then the third is the essentially presentation of the reports. So LeanLaw has some presentations of some reports, revenue by attorney, revenue by client, work in progress. QuickBooks has some more macro reports that you're going to have for the whole law firm. She's showing this performance center. I've never seen this, so why don't you explain what this is?
Yeah, it's new, so it's got a few limitations to it, like I can't drag and drop and move these around. So be thoughtful if you work with a client and you want to start to set this up for them. It's a great spot. You have to educate them. Most attorneys are not going to click into QuickBooks and go into reports. The average partner doesn't tend to even want to really go too much into QuickBooks. They want you to email it to them. You can set that up and send some of these to them. But yeah, you can set it up. You can add a chart. You can only let you have 5. I probably used all 5, but you can set them up and do gross profit. They're kind of little boilerplate ones, but as you can see, I really couldn't pick any because I don't have. I think I'm maxed out. Maybe not. And you can select. Well, I guess I'm not. So you can go in here and start to pick your time period, and you're gonna name it. And then I can come over here, pick the time period. You can pick, this year to date, and you can group it by, I'm going to say by employees. And so this is part of the program itself, which is kind of cool. You can change the look of it too. If you want to filter it, I guess I can filter by locations or classes. I'm not even sure what I have in this sandbox, but yeah, you can play around with however you want to do it. This doesn't have a lot of data, but you can work in here.
and here's the fundamental problem or challenge is that the data is in QuickBooks. And so we
Right.
talked about, will the user go into QuickBooks? So that's why, this is fun and this is somewhat useful if you want to go in and maybe once a month you'll go in, but you're not there.
Mhm.
Two, can we email the data, right? So that's using that sort of, and that's not a QuickBooks Advanced specific feature, that's been in the product for a while, but the idea of knowing what reports we want and getting them emailed out. But then the third is, having some of that data in like a LeanLaw so that you can see some data. And then the fourth, I want to talk a little bit about reach reporting, Linda, and talk a little bit about some of the ideas and opportunities with that. So, and just, what is reach reporting? How would that potentially, you know, take what you were just showing and put it on steroids?
Yeah, so this is basic, right? This is basic stuff. And obviously this file doesn't have a lot of data in it, but if I come over here, I'm going to show you one of our demos for reach reporting. I have a lot more flexibility, and this is just a picture, so I can't really click into it.
Linda, what is reach reporting?
Reach reporting is another app that you would add on to QuickBooks, and it attaches itself to QuickBooks. So this is where it's key about how you set up your QuickBooks, because it's going to extract the data out of QuickBooks for you. And it allows you to really create more graphs. One of the things I like about it is, and we just had this happen with one of our attorneys, he's looking at the balance sheet and he said to us, I don't want to see the balances in trust because to me, that's not my money. And I don't want to even see that on my balance sheet. So we were able to actually come over and shut off there's like a little eyeball and you can shut off that part of the balance sheet because in his mind, he doesn't want to see the liabilities. He wants to look at the balance sheet with that out of it. And you're able to really get that fine-tuned into the balance sheet itself using reach reporting. That I believe you can do that also in Fathom, but reach is a lot easier, and you're able to save templates and you're able to really get really creative. So we've done some compensation reports in here. We're actually building a couple right now for different law firms. We've got a law firm using Eat What You Kill, which is a method that if you've been working with attorneys, you've probably heard that one. And we've got another one that's got like almost like a hierarchical program in place where the partners get a percentage of the next layer down, attorneys, and then the next layer down, it kind of funnels back up. So we're starting to work with that, and that's taking us to set their file up so that that is in place so that I'm going to actually be able to hook up reach and pull that data in. There's also budgeting and forecasting inside of reach, which gives me more flexibility. You can also do that with QuickBooks Advanced. There's a feature called Export to Google Sheets, which is only in QuickBooks Advanced. So you are able to put a budget in place in QuickBooks and take that budget, export it to Google Sheets, and then you've got that live data, right? So you can play around working with the budget with the client where they're in their office, you're on your office, and go through the categories, and they can add notes. And it's actually a pretty cool feature that QuickBooks Advanced has and the other platforms do not have. So when you're in a report, I'll just come over to, I'll probably just pull up a balance sheet report here. Or actually, I'll just pull up profit and loss so you can see. There's the ability, and I haven't used it in a while, but you can see here, export to Google Sheets. So it's in here, but it's not in any of the other programs. So if that's a feature that you need, you really have to take a look at, and a lot of accountants haven't had the time to really look at Advanced because the only way to really look at it is in their demo file. We don't get a copy that we can play around in. So really take the time to look at the feature set that's here because there's so much in it that you might find that maybe your attorney doesn't need to have that, they're not really looking at that cap of 250 in the account category, but some of the features in it, if you add them all in, it might be worthwhile for the law firm to actually go to Advanced just because they need some of the things that are baked in, like maybe they need the advanced reporting, not advanced reporting, but the invoicing, the accelerated invoicing, and some of those features that are in here that you can use, batch checks and things like that, that are part of QuickBooks Online Advanced that are just not in the other products. You get priority circle too, and I always forget about that because it's not something I would use. But if the client is learning the program and they get stuck and they can't reach out to me when we're in the training phase, they can use that. That's like a concierge help desk for them, and they're not going to like the generic QuickBooks one where you're on hold and it takes forever. They can go in there and set up a time and have an expert help them. They might not be a law firm expert, but they might be able to help you with maybe how do I make a credit memo, and the client's new to QuickBooks and doesn't know that. That's still there. It's there for them to use even after maybe the engagement ends, or if they don't continue on with us, then they have that ability to go right to that. It's a higher level help.
So I want to make one comment go back to Reach if you could. So what's important about Reach is to know that Reach is a data repository. So it's great, it's live, it's visual. And LeanLaw is working closely with Reach right now to create a technical integration where data can come directly out of LeanLaw that may not be in QuickBooks, and data can come out of QuickBooks and be mashed up in Reach, or even a third-party tool like some type of CRM or some other tool, so that Reach can become this hub. And that's really the future of essentially law firm data, is this idea that it's sourcing data from multiple places and then mashed up in a way that's meaningful to that specific firm. So we've got just a few minutes left. I wanted to summarize before I finish this one last piece, Linda, what we heard about QuickBooks Advanced. So we heard a usage trigger, more usage. You talked about priority circle, a concierge help desk, the idea that if you need, QuickBooks specific help, it's there. We talked about specific features that facilitate automation, like workflows, a Google Sheets adoption. So did I miss anything specific about QBO Advanced?
Yeah, QBO AV, I think they call it. No, I don't think so. I think that, you're unlimited with your classes, your locations. Those are things that are also capped in the lower products. It's 40, a combination of classes and locations. So if you start to get into using classes to aggregate out the data, you are going to be able to go, if you have a big firm, and some of these firms we work with have there's 45 people in the firm. So when you start to get into that size firm, you might need a lot more classes if you're using classes for the employees. So you really have to think about those things. And like I said, if they're coming from mid-market and they're using a PC law or a product like that, they're paying a lot of money. Just take a look in their file to see what they're paying for the program. And they are flabbergasted when they get into this platform and they realize the one thing I have to tell them all the time when we're training is don't overthink it. They can't get over how easy it is. And when you start to layer on some of the apps for automation, like Receipt Bank or a HubDoc, and you start to automate that process, it just makes a sweet workflow and it really helps.
So I want to just end this by talking a little bit, I call it onboarding extra credit, but I just want people to think about if they're moving and change, that this always the migration always happens in 3 phases. So phase 1, and this is sort of the last piece, which is, the question is how do I get from here to there? Phase 1 is always getting the user set up, getting data migrated, getting the application set up. And phase 1 always ends with the cutover date. So at some point you make a decision, I'm going to cut over to a new program, whether that's QuickBooks, whether that's LeanLaw, or whether it's the tandem of the two. But it's always about a cutover, and lead up is getting your reporting, your data migrated, etc. Phase 2 is about workflows and accounting. It's fine-tuning the accounting data and fine-tuning the workflows and learning the how-tos. How do I do this? How do I do that? And that typically ends with the first invoicing. You've gone through that first invoicing, you should have a basic fundamental usage of the product. When you get into phase 3, I call it mastery and reporting. You can never get the reports that you want other than the basic blocking and tackling, revenue by attorney or, client billables in the first 60 days. It just doesn't happen because it takes some time to get data into these architects or these systems, and you either create custom Excel files or Reach reporting or some other tool. And that's what this third phase is about, is really understanding the data and going to the next level with it. But it's also mastery of the product, right? And that typically is the third invoicing. So when you get into 90 days, you should have a good sense of, I really have an institutional knowledge of this platform. And the reporting, and sometimes it goes longer because there's some custom work to be done. Like with us in Reach, we're working on a deal with them, and there's some technical work we have to do and some technical work they have to do, so it takes a minute. But others are plug and play. especially if that sort of technical architecture is in place. And then you're just, mashing up the dashboards that make sense. And we foresee a day when we'll see a reach-like dashboard inside LeanLaw. I mean, that's our aspiration for that. So that I just wanted to give you some context of what it looks like to get from where someone might be to where they'll go. So we're right at the hour. I really appreciate, Linda, your time and your intellect and everything that you bring to this. I'm very grateful for our partnership with you. And to everyone who attended, I'm really appreciative of your interest in LeanLaw. I hope you got something out of it. We'll welcome your feedback because we always want to learn and get better at what we do. And if there's any specific questions or any areas that anyone didn't see covered and they want to, please reach out. There'll be some follow-up emails that you can reach out to us, and we'd love to hear your questions and connect with you and answer all of them. Linda, thank you so much. I'm gonna end the session and wish everyone a really good day. Take care, everyone.